ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste my dear friends, this is video number 8 on Ramana Gita. This video starts with chapter 13 on the equality of women for sannyasa. Line of the Upanishad says Atreya, a tradition of Tantra Shastra bequeathed by female gurus. A.R. Natarajan translation verse 1, 2, 3 and 4. Light of the moon of Atreyas married into Vasishta lineage, mother of brave Mahadeva, knower of Brahma, an ideal wife, devoted to the welfare of the world and the practice of the great Sri Vidya, praised by sages. The first guru south of Vindhyas in Tara Vidya, my friend in tapas, Visalaksi of great fame, submitted two questions through me to Ramana, the sage and friend of the universe. Commentary. This chapter is important and is of prophetic value. It must be remembered that Ramana's replies concerning women's status in essential spiritual matters were given in the early part of the century when co-status for women was not generally accepted. Again, one of the questions raised was to become of direct relevance when the Maharshi's mother Ajagammal was absorbed in the self a few years later. In this verse, the adjective friend of universe seems to be used for Ramana because his replies are relevant to everyone for all time. These verses evidence the respect in which the Muni held his wife Visalakshi. In his Sanskrit commentary, Sri Kapali Shastri mentions that the praise given to the Muni's son Mahadeva is because at the tender age of 10 he became a full recipient of the grace of the Maharshi for the steadfast pursuit of self enquiry, making him an heir to self knowledge. Note: Sanskrit versions of chapter 13 in Sri Ramana's handwriting is in photo file Ramana Gita album. Chapter 13 verse 5 and 6. Translation by Sri Kapali Shastriyar, author of Sat Darshana Bhase. Here the wife of the Muni Visalakshi is the questioner. Ganpati has introduced her already in four poetic verses. 5. If women stationed in the self because of obstacles take to sannyasa, renouncing family life, has it the approval of the Shastras? 6. For one liberated even when alive, if her body drops, what is the proper thing to do afterwards? Cremation or internment? A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 5. If obstacle to self-abidance arise for women, do scriptures permit their renouncing the home and becoming renunciates? Commentary. The Hindu scriptures divide the stages of life into four: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanprastha, and Sannyasa. The life of a celibate, householder, forest dweller, and renunciate. Sannyasa has been generally understood to be permitted for men only and not for women. The doubt is therefore expressed as to whether renunciation of home is permissible for women too. The question itself refers only to earnest seekers solely concerned with self knowledge and who are therefore keen on overcoming all obstacles on its path. Maharshi, because of his steady wisdom, was in a position to interpret the ethical code of conduct. His words, based on direct experience of truth, are not only a gospel for his devotees but have a validity for all. Verse 6: If a woman liberated while alive sheds her body, what would be the right thing to do, cremation or burial? Commentary: Ordinarily, cremation is regarded as proper on death. However, for a Jivan Mukta, the one liberated while in the body, it is said that the body should be interred sitting in a yogic posture. Elaborate methods have been prescribed by seers like Tirumular for the manner in which it should be done. The doubt raised is whether this rule is equally applicable to a liberated woman as well. Translation by Sri Kapali Shastriyar, Sanskrit English, rendering by S. Sankara Narayana. 7. Bhagwan, the loftiest amongst the seers, knowing the essential meaning of all the Shastras, having heard this couple of questions, pronounced his decision. 8. For women mature in sadhana, living in their own true form, sannyasa is not blameworthy as the prohibition, prohibition has been withdrawn. A.R. Natarajan translation verse 7. After listening to the two questions, verse 5 and 6, Bhagwan, the great sage, the knower of the essence of scriptures, gave his decision. Commentary: It is said that one should learn the scriptures at the feet of the Guru. In this case, the teacher knew the import of the scriptures by his unique spiritual stature and was therefore a fit person to learn from. It is important to note that the Muni uses the expression decisions and not replies. This is because the questions relate to practice of dharma, observance of a correct ethical code. Maharshi's words themselves are the authority for the validity of the replies. Verse 8: Since scriptures do not prohibit it, there is nothing wrong in a woman abiding in the self and becoming an ascetic when fully ripe. Commentary: Restrictions based on sex cannot apply to the discharge of one's paramount duty, namely discovering one's true nature. Life has a dual purpose: the exhaustion of a portion of the ethical balance sheet and the use of the discriminative faculty to search and find the truth. The regulation and codes of conduct are applicable within the karmic framework and cannot bind ripe souls who have transcended its limitations. The only qualification for renunciation of home, equally applicable to man and woman, is that one should be ripe for it. Often, in the spur of temporary disappointment or of the stresses and pressures of daily life, one might put on the ochre robe and regard oneself as a sannyasi. Such mere change in environment and status is not what is required. Hence, in the reply, Maharshi refers to ripeness as a precondition. Translation by Sri Kapali Shastriyar, Sanskrit English rendering by S. Sankaranarayanan. Bhagwan 9. As there is no distinction in liberation and knowledge, a woman also liberated when alive should not be consigned to flames. Her body is verily a temple of God. 10. All the blame that is attached to the burning of the body of a liberated man is equally applicable to the burning of the body of a liberated woman. 11. On the 21st day, this matter was declared about the woman of knowledge by the sage Ramana Maharshi. A.R. Natarajan translation, verse 9. In liberation and self-knowledge, there is no difference between men and women. The body of a woman liberated while alive is not to be cremated, cremated as it is a temple of God. Commentary. Distinctions of sex are based on the I am body idea. Once this is transcended, one becomes a pure flame of knowledge, neither male nor female. For liberation and knowledge, men are not superior to women, both are at par. The body of a liberated one, man or woman, is not mere flesh and bones, but a pure channel of the divine, radiating God. It is worthy of worship, and the body has to be preserved for such worship by performing appropriate rites and building a samadhi and shrine over it. There is a reference to this view in a prayer by Ramana to Arunachala a few years earlier in 1914, when he had prayed for mother's recovery from typhoid, wherein he asked where is the need for cremation if one's dross is washed away by the fire of knowledge. There seems to be a divine purpose in this question because precisely this very doubt arose in 1922 regarding Ajagamal. She had attained liberation by the grace of Ramana. When the question arose as to whether her body should be buried or cremated, the Muni pointed out that the issue had already been settled by Ramana's reply in Ramana Gita. Mother was interred, a samadhi was built over her body, and subsequently a shrine where regular worship is performed. Bhagwan Ramana and Mother, page 16, verse 10. The adverse consequences which flow from the cremation of the body of a liberated man will follow even if the body of a liberated woman is cremated. Commentary. This statement follows from the basic proposition that in liberation there is no distinction of sex. To cremate a liberated person's body is equivalent to burning a place of worship and is bound to be beset with adverse consequences, not only for those responsible for it but also for the community at large. Verse 11. These points regarding a liberated woman were elucidated on the 21st day of August by the sage Ramana Maharshi, and of chapter 13 on the equality of women for sannyasa, chapter 14 Jivan Mukti. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Vishwanatha Swami translation. 1 and 2 on the night of the 21st August 1917. Wise Bharadvaja, born in Shivakula family, great among the learned, well versed in speech, questioned the Maharshi on Jivan Mukti, and in the hearing of all the Maharshi replied, 3. Jivan Mukti is firm abidance in being, unaffected by scriptural or worldly ideas. A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 1 and 2 on the 21st August, Vedarbha of Bhardwaja lineage, born of Sivakula family, great among learned, adept at speech, questioned the Maharshi on liberation while alive. After listening, the Maharshi replied in the hearing of all commentary. The adjective adept has been used for the questioner Vedarbha since it would be seen from Ramana's reply set out in the next 15 verses that all aspects have been fully covered. Jivan Mukti is the cutting of the sense of doership linked with identification of the self with the body. The self-abidance of one in this state is firm. The cutting of the knot of matter and spirit has been dealt with fully in chapter 9 of Ramana Gita. The replies of Maharshi are particularly significant because he had become a Jivan Mukta at the tender age of 16 after his confrontation with death, which made him experience directly the import of the true I. Self-realization. B.V. Narasimha Swami, page 21, verse 3. Steady abidance in the self, undisturbed by scriptural or worldly ideas, is Jivan Mukti. Commentary. In the very first chapter of Ramana Gita on Upasana, Ramana has made a distinction between abidance in the self and firm abidance in it. The intermittent experience of the self by conscious effort is termed abhyasa or practice. Only when the I is merged firmly in the source it is state of liberation while in the body. The reference here not only to worldly ideas but also to scriptural thought is significant, for many seekers are apt to be lost in a maze of scriptural learning, losing sight of the fact that the purpose of the scriptures is only to point the way to experience the truth for oneself. The knowledge which they provide is indirect and descriptive and is not a substitute for direct experience. Again, any thought movement, even if it be noble or dharmic, is a distraction to self-abidance. The need of a Jivan Mukta is waveless, completely free of thought, like a vast ocean in the mid-afternoon without even a ripple. Ramana Gita, chapter 1, verse 13. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Vishwanatha Swami translation. Verse 4. Bhagwan, there are no differences in prajna, transcendental awareness, hence mukti is of one kind only. One liberated while yet in the body is called a Jivan Mukta. A.R. Natarajan translation, verse 4. Liberation is only of one kind. There is no difference in the state of awareness. One liberated while in the body is called Jivan Mukta. Commentary. In verse 3, one characteristic of Jivan Mukti, firm self-abidance, has been set out. Here another characteristic is mentioned. Even though such a person is having a body, he is in fact bodiless, for he is no longer deluded by the idea that he is the body. Some scholars talk about different types of liberation while in the body or after the body drops off, liberation with form, without form, and so on. These are mere ideas centered on the ego. When On proper enquiry, the ego is merged in its source. Then all those concepts too automatically end. Since the Maharshi states that the death of ego is liberation, he asserts that liberation is only unwavering in inherence in the self and that other attributes like continuing in body or becoming invisible or immaterial. On Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana, at what stage do the scriptures become useless? When their essence is realized, the scriptures are useful to indicate the existence of higher power, the self, and the way to gain it. Their essence is that much only. When that is assimilated, the rest is useless. But they are voluminous, adapted to the development of the seeker. As one rising up in the scale finds the regions one has passed to be only steps to the higher stage, and so on. The steps ascended become Purvakasha successively until the goal is gained. When the goal is reached, it remains alone and all the rest becomes useless. That is how the Shastras become useless. From talks number 63. Prima facie argument advanced as justification a former view on a particular point. Jivan Mukti is very firm abidance in one's natural state through an absolute conviction which remains undisturbed by the ideas of the Shastras or indeed by the ideas of the world. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Vishwanath Swami translation. 5. There is no difference between the experience of a Jivan Mukta and that of one who, according to the scriptures, goes to Brahmaloka and gets liberated there. 6. Identical with the experience of the above two is that of the Mahatma whose Puranas merge into pure being even here at the time of death. A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 5. There is no difference in the experience of one liberated while alive and that heard of in the Vedas of one who goes to Brahmaloka and gets liberated there. Verse 6. The experience of a great person whose life force merges in the self at the time of death is the same as that of the above two. Commentary. Many ripe persons are absorbed in the self at the time of death, either by strength of their past good actions or by the grace of God or the blessings of a Satguru. Ramana clarifies that they too are on power with those who were liberated while in the body or those who get liberated in Brahmaloka. It would be worth recalling here that the Maharshi liberated his mother Azmagamal on the day of her liberation. He went into her room in the morning and sat by her side. Throughout the day he had his right hand on her spiritual heart and his left on her head. By this grace, all the remaining tendencies which would have given rise to further births were pushed back into the heart. So, when the end came, it became an absorption of the life force and threw out force and thought force into the heart. A liberation, not death. Bhagwan Ramana and Mother, page 40. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Vishwanatha Swami translation. 7. Abidance in the self is the same for all. The destruction of bondage is the same for all, and there is but one kind of mukti. Difference between muktas appears only to the minds of others. Of best of men, the Mahatma who abides in the self and gets released while yet alive, his life forces to get absorbed in the self even here. A.R. Natarajan translation verse 7. Liberation is of one kind only. Self abidance is the same. Ending of bondage is the same. Differences are only in the minds of the onlookers. Commentary. The onlooker is unable to perceive the essence things and is caught up in theories about difference in types of liberation, such as during life, at the time of death, and in Brahmaloka. But the basic issue is whether there is difference in the state of liberated persons. The answer is no. Why? Because liberation only means firm self abidance. Verse 8. Best of man, the life force of the great person who abides in the self and gets liberated while in the body, is absorbed in the self even here. Commentary. The absorption of life force in the self is the mark of liberation. For one who is liberated while in the body, such absorption takes place at the point of drowning of self-knowledge. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Viswanatha Swami translation. 9. Bhagwan. In some cases, owing to ripening of tapas, the Jivan Mukta may in time attain intangibility while the form remains. 10. With further maturity, even disappearance of form, invisibility ensues. Remaining as pure awareness alone, such a Siddha disports himself as he likes. A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 9. In some cases, the one liberated while in the body may in time, due to ripening of penance, even obtain the power of intangibility while the form remains. Commentary. Those whose obedience is steady are aware, performing penance. Why then are the expressions in time and ripening used? An explanation is being give about a particular power which some liberated ones have. It cannot be because of their difference from other liberated ones, for it has been reiterated in the earlier verses that the state of the liberated ones is identical. Why the difference? For this, one could usefully refer to an earlier doubt of Ganpati Muni as to whether the previous desires would be fulfilled even after self knowledge. The answer was that they may be fulfilled, but it would not be a matter for elation, because the liberated view everything neutrally. From this, one could say that the earlier yogic practice with a desire for tangibility might get fulfilled in time and lead to existence of the power in a liberated one, though it would not make any difference to his state. Ramana Gita chapter 8 verse 8. Verse 10. Even invisibility might arise. The one endowed with such power sports as he likes as consciousness only. Commentary. In the earlier verse, the power of being outside the pale of touch is referred to. In this verse, the power to remain out of sight is mentioned. One should, however, remember that absence of such powers does not make any difference in the state of the liberated one. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Viswanatha Swami translation. 11. Oh, Be set of man. These two siddhis of the body may come about in a short time through divine grace. 12. Difference in siddhis does not mean any difference in mukti. One who abides in the self is a mukta whether with or without the body. A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 11. These two powers of the body may come about even in a short time by the grace of God. Commentary. The first point made is that the two powers referred to in the earlier two verses pertain to the body. The body becomes intangible or invisible ordinarily like any other karmic factor. The power would come about when the time is right for it. However, it could be quickened by the operation of divine grace. The question would arise as to how the liberated one whose state is not different from that of God Himself can in any way benefit from divine grace. The answer is that these powers pertain to the body. The body continues to be subject to the laws of karma and grace. Since the powers are products of karma, the Creator's grace could hasten the process. Verse 12. These differences in powers do not mean any difference in liberation. One who abides in the self is liberated whether in body or not. Commentary. Again, Ramana makes it a point to draw attention to the fact that powers, whatever they may be, have no essential link with the state of liberation. They pertain to the body, and how can they affect one who has no attachment to the body? What matters is steady self-abidance. Professor K. Swami Nathan and Sri Viswanatha Swami translation. 13. He who ascends to higher worlds through Susmana Nadi and along the path of Archis, the way by which it moves, again liberation forthwith by virtue of the enlightenment arising there. 14. To a loving devotee of well-ripened mind, the ascent through the nadi to the highest goal occurs through grace divine. 15. He can roam at will in all the worlds, assume as many bodies as he likes, and even confirm grace on others. Here Natarajan. Verse 13. He who ascends through Amrit Nadi along the path of Archis gains liberation immediately because of the enlightenment arising there. The Amrit Nadi is the channel for the flow of consciousness from the heart to the mind center, and the path by which it travels is termed Archis. Verse 14. For an earnest seeker with a well ripened mind, the ascent to the highest goal occurs by divine grace. Commentary. With the seeker's mind, when the seeker's mind becomes purified by unwearied pursuit of self inquiry or contemplation of God, he becomes ripe for receiving the grace of a Sadguru or God. Such grace accelerates spiritual evolution and bestows the highest. Verse 15. He can move as the he can move as he pleases in all the worlds, assume as many bodies as he desires, and even confirm grace on others. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Viswanatha Swami translation. Bhagwan. 16. Some wise men say Kailasa is the world of the liberated, others Vaikuntha, and yet others the region of the sun. 17. Oh, learned one, like this and other planets These words of the liberated also are projected on being by the marvelous power of Shakti. End of chapter 14. A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 16. Some wise men say that Kailasa is the world of the liberated, others Vaikuntha, and yet others the region of the sun. Commentary. Worshippers of Shiva regard Shiva's world Kailasa as the abode of the liberated. Similarly, worshippers of Vishnu regard his region Vaikuntha as the places of liberated. Others regard the solar sphere as the habitation of the liberated. Verse 17. Like the earth and other planets, these words of the liberated are also projections on the self caused by its marvelous power. Commentary. Ramana brings the questioner back to essentials while replying to Kapali. He had earlier made it clear that the world regarded as the sport of power is only the idea of God, the Creator. Similar to are these worlds said to be the home of the liberated. Whatever may be the world in which the liberated one is, he is not taken in by the play of power. He has transcended conceptualization and having merged his life force in the self, he is ever reveling in truth. Ramana Gita chapter 14 concluded. Note: Sanskrit version of chapter 14 in Sri Ramana's handwriting is in the photo file Ramana Gita album. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Viswanatha Swami translation. Ganapati Mani. 1. O Lord, the best in the line of sages, what is meant by Sarvana, Manana and Nididhyasana? 2. Thus questioned by me, Sri Bhagwan, the best of the knowers of Burma, spoke in the gathering of disciples on the morning of the 22nd day of August 1917. A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 1. Lord, what is meant by Sarvana, listening to the truth, Manana, contemplation on it, and Nididhasana, abiding as that. Verse 2. Thus questioned by me, Sri Bhagwan, the best of knowers of Burma, spoke in the gathering of disciples on the morning of the 22nd August. Commentary. The scriptures declare that for the discovery of the self, one should listen about it, contemplate it on it, and abide as that, each leading to the other. Being one of the most important scriptural statements, Ganpati Muni seeks his Sadguru's clarification on it. Note: Sanskrit version of chapter 15 in Sri Ramana's handwriting is in photo file Ramana's Gita album. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Viswanatha Swami translation. Bhagwan. 3. Some say that Sarvana is listening to the perceptor as he expounds the Vedantic text with meaning and commentary. 4. Others say that Sarvana is also listening to a teacher who knows the Atman, explaining in his own language and words the nature of being. End of chapter 14. Jivan Mukti. Chapter 15. Om Sarvana Manana Nididhasana. So I conclude this video at this stage. Next video number 9 will start with chapter 15. Om Sarvana Manana and Nidhi Dhasana. Namaskar, my dear friends. Thank you for listening this video. Thank you. Namaskar.